Thank you so much for joining us. I have the great privilege of being allowed by the powers that be to interview Grieves, who's a
really cool,
fantabulous rapper from Seattle, Washington, and I love his stuff. So it's a real pleasure to be able to have him here and to actually look into his process. All right, so we are lucky enough to actually have this session, and we can look into how this was made, which is technical term, bananas. Yeah? All right. So we've done this before, so I have an insight that you actually started this, the inspiration for this whole track was the breakbeat.
Yeah. I feel like with the songwriting process, I can't really describe what the first step always is. But with this one, I think it was the drums. It's not a very complicated track, and it just kind of rides that groove the whole time.
All right,
so yeah, the breakbeat.
Let's listen to the breakbeat by itself. So that's a classic thing. I'm going to loop it here. So let's look into how this was made. So we actually have two. I'm going to highlight them in green here so you see what's going on. You actually have two tracks, but they're the same track.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bypass all the plugins, and we're going to listen track one.
Which sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds fine.
And then track two sounds the same. It's just louder because it's a duplicate.
Yeah.
So explain to me what you do with the second track. Why do you have two tracks?
When I'm working with breakbeats, it's kind of like an old school hip hop trick of mine. I don't know how old school really is, but when I first started producing, I was just using an MPC, so I had to work with what I had. And the best way to be able to control the low end on a breakbeat, especially on an MPC, would be to cut all the highs, duplicate it. You cut all the highs out of one, and then you cut just, the super subby low lows out of the other, and then you can control that low end, via like a fader or something like that on MPC, but it makes it so much easier in a DAW because you can really mold it and sculpt it to what you want.
So for example, this is the duplicate track only. And then he used the Harrison EQ from UAD to do this. Okay, this is where that comes from. And then a little bit of the API 2500 to tighten it. The idea here is that you hear the pocket, boom, pom, 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 clack. If you compress that, the pom, 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 pom will be, more together, and it'll be a more steady sound. And then on the other side, we have this. So you use the Cambridge to high pass.
Yep, and just pop a little snap in the snare there. What is it, like 200?
200 and change, 268.
Yeah. Yep.
Then you compress a little bit with this.
Glue it together.
Same thing, put everybody together in the same spot. Do it again because you can.
Because the API goes on everything.
There you go. The hard tone thing is really awesome. And then some space.
Yep.
And then the two of them together. There's your breakbeat. Very nice. You also added a kick.
More low end, man. It's hip hop.
So, with the three of them together, without, see how the third kick adds definition? So on this kick, there's no processing. How to decide when to process and when to not?
It's just one of those things. If it sounds good, maybe you don't really need to mess with it.
What a concept.
And the beauty of, the Apollo products is you can run samples or a live kick drum through, their unison preamps, and you can craft that sound on the way in. So when you send your tracks off to mixing or your kick finds its way to another engineer, they're not messing with your tone or the structure that you created, because it's, as you see, there it is.
It is. So what Benjamin is mentioning is that because he's using an Apollo, he's able to use the same plugins we're using here in Pro Tools in the Apollo console, which is here, and use them as if they were a piece of hardware in real time with no latency on the way to the DAW. All right, we'll talk about it more in a second. So cool. So all those drums, the rest of the drums is decoration. It's like a little bit of...
It just adds to the groove. There's a bongo loop in there.
Woo! You know what I love the best is that you have all those breaks here.
Yeah.
And then once at the end, you have a badass cymbal on the downbeat. And that's classy. I think it's here.
Because you expect it every time.
You expect it every time.
And then you expect it not to happen.
And then it happens.
And then it happens.
It's creamy. Okay.
I'm tricky, Fab.
I like it. So cool. So something else I'd like to talk about is once you have all those drums, you route them to this bus right here called drum bus. So you have all your drums going to the drum bus, and then that bus goes into another bus.
Yeah.
Everybody's with me? We're busing. Into a bus called the music bus, where the rest of the music on top of the drums goes to.
Yeah.
And then you have all the vocals going to a vocal bus, and now the music bus and the vocal bus are going to a print bus. Everybody still with us? All right? Cool. Pay attention. There's busing going on.
Pretty standard.
Well, actually, no, it's not that standard. This is
Well,
an
the music
interesting way
bus is weird. I get
Okay.
that.
So why do you do that?
I think it must have been, I did this a year ago, so I'm still trying to pull from my memory what really happened there. But I think the music bus was a way for me to, especially in this track, to just mute everything super fast, opposed to having to highlight all the tracks and shift option, click the mute button, you know. And that way I could focus more on the vocal tone, which we'll get to a little later. But, you know, I think most of my sessions will have a melodic bus, a drum bus, and a vocal bus, and those will all go to the print bus. And it's just strictly for organization. You don't have to do it a certain way. It just works for my workflow works best when I'm able to shut things up or control things a little bit more.
Cool. So that's a good way to organize stuff. When you're starting to have a lot of tracks in your song, you can spend more time looking for stuff or managing the actual mechanics of the session than making music. Here doing this, if I run the track,
They okay. They looking at us like we came from space,
vocals.
and I don't care.
you can mute the music with just one click, which is a very smart way of working. Cool. So that's cool. I'd like to ask you some questions about this hook,
Yes.
because I love it. Is this a real Rhodes?
This is a real Rose. Yeah, it's a 73. I bought it from some hipster kid in Seattle that thought it was a broken synthesizer like 5 years ago. So I got a deal on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I see here you have a bunch of plugins. Let me bypass them. So tell me a little bit about your process with this Rhodes.
Okay, so a while ago I had one of those vintage vibe cheap block amps installed into my Rhodes because I just don't think I was getting what I wanted out of like the Rhodes VSTs. Everybody and their mom makes a Rhodes VST.
Yeah.
It comes with almost every DAW that you get is a Rhodes VST. And I just wasn't really pumped on any of them.
Because they're not very good.
They're not very good.
Yeah.
And I was amping, you know, I was micing up my amp, and I was getting a very specific sound out of that. And so I had that cheek block installed. So now it just runs DI into the Apollo. It always lives on that channel. And before the Galaxy Tape Echo came out, I was always running my Rhodes through the Roland Space Echo pedal.
Yep.
It was just kind of the way that I like to hear my Rhodes, and throughout my records just kind of became the sound of the Rhodes on my records.
Yeah.
And then I realized once the Galaxy came out that it sounds great, if
Sure does.
not better.
So
And,
what Benjamin does is, say this is, you see the input console behind me right now. So let's say Benjamin would plug his Rhodes. By the way, Rhodes is, a lot of them are mono, into twin input 1, okay? And he would say, okay, I'm going to have a delay, and I'm going to use the Galaxy Tape Echo on that input. So now it's the same having a hardware unit, a 201, but it's virtual, and it's no latency. You have no latency with it. So it's the same as having the hardware. You have more control and less trouble with broken tapes,
yeah,
because those things break a lot. I have one, it's broken right now.
everybody does.
So I use the plugin. So that's the process. Everybody clear with that? The whole real-time thing into the DAW. You can also choose to record it or not. Did you choose to record that effect or not?
I think especially with you know, these kind of creative effects like delay and reverb, I tend to get really excited on the front end of it, which means I overdo it a lot. So I like to play with it on. I like to have it so I catch the vibe a bit in the track. But I really should not be recording that into my song because I'm just going to have to re-record that part anyways. So
Okay, so there's this button right here. As you can see it changing. Red, you're recording. International convention for recording is red. And then green, you're just listening to it and monitoring it, but you're not recording it. It's really good. And you can actually change the status of record versus monitor on a channel per channel basis, which is also technically speaking bananas.
Yeah.
So I use this stuff all the time. I know you do too. So let me remove this. And let's go back to the DAW and listen to the raw sound.
And one more thing with that Rhodes, especially when you're working out of the console part of UAD, is you don't have to redial in those settings anymore. You can just pull it up, hit that copy button, flip back over into your DAW, hit paste, and it's as easy as that. So you had the exact same settings that you were working with on the front end now in your DAW. And so you can dial it back, which is exactly how you recorded it, but now you can dial it up or dial it back, however you want.
So this is a high-pass filter with a Cambridge, so you're getting rid of the bottom. And then you're compressing a smidgen.
Just a tad.
Just a smidgen compression. The needle is not moving in that other direction.
It's all the way out.
And then you copy-paste of what you recorded of the Galaxy. And now we are really in a really nice space. And then you're using this plugin, which I don't personally know.
It's just kind of a stereo with a little bit of saturation kind of vibe.
So that's the sound. Any context?
That's what happens when you're doing your thing. Everybody we feeling pretty damn good. They're looking at us like I knew they would, and I don't mind.
So little touches here and there make this really great vibe, right? Let's talk about vocals for a second, because you have a slightly unusual setup here. So you have, as you can see above my head, we have a bunch of green tracks, a couple blue tracks, and yellow tracks. These are all vocals. And all those tracks are being bussed to the voice bus. And on the voice bus, you have a bunch of processing.
Sure do.
But you have your lead vocals and your background vocals all bussed to one bus that has all the processing for all vocals on that one bus.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I think everything's on a step-by-step basis. Sometimes that sounds good. It could be a happy mistake, a pleasant mistake. And also, especially with vocals, I've created presets now in my studio to everything that I would want depending on what I'm recording. So when I know that I'm doing overdubs or those really bad falsetto dubs, I know, the compression and the EQ that I already kind of want to happen with that. So that's all happening on the way in. So they sound great already. I put a little bit of extra oomph on the lead vocal just to make it pop out. It's pretty subtle, but it really works in the mix.
So he's using the Fatso. The Fatso is emulation of an ELI hardware box that has a tape emulator in it, and it makes things sound a little more saturated and beautiful. It also has this amazing warmth system, which is a high-end limiter, really what it is. It's not warmth at all. It's a high-end limiter, and it works wonderful. So that's an interesting move there. So this is what the vocal sounds like soloed.
We feeling A-okay. They looking at us like we came from.
Let's go somewhere where it's just you.
So you could just mute the music bus, and then you had solo vocals.
I just did that. See, I'm learning from you, brother.
Yeah, I got you, man.
There you go.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for.
So let's look at what you have on this bus. We have an SSL channel, a de-esser, and a pull tech. The fifth plugin is just a high-pass filter that you put at the end because all that stuff sounds pretty fat.
Yep.
So this is what it sounds like with nothing on it.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to. I got my headphones.
So first in line, you have your SSL.
Yep.
And it does this.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to.
So you make it more aggressive and more forward. You're actually not using the compressor much.
No.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to.
Then you have a de-esser there.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to.
Then you're using this badass Fairchild as your main compressor, and you're going heavy on it.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to.
We're getting closer to the sound we used to hear on hip-hop records, where everything is really kind of like in one block, not moving.
Yep.
And then you use the pull tech to bring the high end up and the bottom up also.
I said I came through buzzing. I was
That adds a
looking
little
for a
butter
little
to the
funky jam
vocals.
that I can stick it to.
And then,
I got my headphones bumping. If you isolate my vocals, you could probably hear it bleeding through. Word, every.
in the context of the record, sounds like this.
I said I came through buzzing. I was looking for a little funky jam that I could stick it to. I got my headphones bumping. If you isolate my vocals, you could probably hear it bleeding through.
That's awesome. Then, something else I want to discuss because it's interesting and unusual. Here on these interventions, on these little interventions in the back here, these guys.
They looking at us like I knew they would, and I don't mind.
Okay, so here, this is all going through the same bus with all the same processing, but you're also sending them to a distortion box.
I am.
This
Yeah.
one, which is meant for guitars. So what was the idea behind that?
They gave me too many plugins, and I was like searching through all my plugins trying to find one that would provide me that kind of distorted vocal tone, which is pretty popular now. But I don't know, I couldn't find it, and I think out of rage, I was like, you know what will have it? A goddamn guitar amp. And it sounds great. I mean, it's not the first time I've done it, but you know, a lot of the UAD guitar amps are really big, they're really present, and it was really easy to sculpt in that saturation, that warmth that I wanted out of that. So it was actually pleasant.
Let me show you. So this is just the raw sound.
They looking at us like I knew they would, and I don't mind.
This is with a lot of the distortion.
They looking at us like I knew they would, and I don't mind.
And then this is with the amount of distortion that was decided was tasteful at the time.
They looking at us like I knew they would,
Yeah, just
and
a
I
touch.
don't mind.
And this is what it sounds like in the track.
They looking at us like I knew they would, and I don't mind. Man, let them foam at the mouth.
It grits it up just enough to poke
Yes.
out. It's nice.
It helps you break through the track without making it louder. It's a very smart way of doing things. So these are a few of the techniques that Grieves is using to make the track sound the way it does. We could be doing this for hours and hours and hours, but we can't because we're at NAMM and our feet hurt, right? Thank you, man. Beautiful. So we have to vacate the premises, but if you want to ask Grieves some question, he's going to slide gracefully to the left over there, to the left, and you can chat with him.